My name is Jack and I am 60 years old. On Thanksgiving morning, I stood alone in my small rented kitchen, staring at a turkey I could barely afford. The bird was still half frozen, my hands numb from the cold sink water, and my heart heavier than the sky outside. I remember thinking how strange life is, how a man can spend decades building a family, sacrificing sleep, comfort, and dreams, only to one day feel like a guest in the very world he created. I had been invited to my son's house for Thanksgiving dinner. It was his first Thanksgiving after marriage. His wife, Melissa, had planned a perfect family gathering. That's what she said on the phone. Her voice was polite, but there was something sharp underneath it, like a smile that hides teeth. I put on my old brown coat, the one with frayed cuffs, and checked my wallet. Inside were a few notes, some old photos, and a folded receipt I kept for reasons even I didn't fully understand. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. Gray hair, wrinkles that told stories of long shifts, late nights, and quiet tears. I whispered to myself, "Hold your head up, Jack. You've survived worse than a cold stare." The long walk back to my son. My son, Daniel, used to run toward me when I came home from work. Back then, my boots were heavy with factory dust, but my arms were strong enough to lift him high into the air. His laughter was my paycheck. I worked 2 jobs after his mother passed away. I never told him how tired I was. Fathers don't like to be seen as weak. Years later, Daniel went to college, met Melissa, and slowly I felt myself being edited out of his life. Not erased, just reduced. Phone calls became shorter, visits became rarer. When he did come by, he looked uncomfortable in my small apartment, as if the walls embarrassed him. That Thanksgiving, I took a bus across town. The seats were cold, the windows fogged, and every bump on the road felt like a reminder that I was getting old. When I finally reached Daniel's neighborhood, I saw rows of neat houses, shiny cars, trimmed lawns. My son had done well. I was proud of him, truly, but pride can sometimes walk hand in hand with loneliness. The table that felt like a stage. Their house was bright, filled with the smell of roasted turkey, cinnamon, and baked bread. Laughter spilled out the door when I rang the bell. Melissa opened it, looked me up and down, and her smile faltered just for a second, long enough for me to notice. "Oh, you made it," she said. Inside, relatives chatted about investments, vacations, new phones, promotions. I sat quietly at the corner of the table. Melissa moved around like a host on a stage, adjusting plates, correcting small details, performing her version of perfection. At one point, someone asked what I had been up to these days. Before I could answer, Melissa laughed lightly and said, "Oh, Jack keeps things simple, very simple." Her eyes flicked to my worn shoes. The table went quiet for a moment. My son looked down at his plate. No one defended me. The silence was louder than any insult. I tried to smile, I really did, but something inside me cracked. Later, as dessert was being served, Melissa's patience thinned. She was stressed, trying to impress everyone. And then, in a moment that still stings to remember, she said, loud enough for the whole table to hear, "Honestly, Daniel, I don't understand why your dad lives the way he does. No ambition, no growth. Some people just stay losers their whole lives." The word loser hung in the air like smoke. I felt my face burn, my chest tightened. 60 years of living, loving, losing, and surviving, and in one careless sentence I was reduced to nothing. I stood up slowly, my hands were steady but my voice was quiet. "May I be excused?" I said. Melissa shrugged. "Suit yourself." The quiet truth. I stepped outside into the cold. The evening air hit my lungs, sharp and clean. I stood on the porch, staring at the streetlights. For a moment, I considered just walking away, disappearing from their world forever. Maybe that's what they wanted. But then I remembered the nights I skipped dinner so Daniel could eat. The years I saved every extra coin instead of buying myself comfort. The promise I made to his mother before she died, that our son would never worry about his future. I reached into my pocket and felt the folded receipt. I unfolded it slowly. Inside was proof of something no one at that table knew. The reveal. I walked back inside. The room fell quiet again. "Melissa," I said gently, "you called me a loser." She raised an eyebrow. I said, "Some people don't grow. If that fits, that's not my problem." I nodded. "You're right, growth looks different to different people." Then I turned to Daniel. "Son, I never wanted to burden you with my choices, but maybe I made a mistake by staying invisible." I took out my phone and placed it on the table. I showed them pictures, not of luxury vacations, not of flashy cars, but of a mansion, a quiet estate on the outskirts of the city, wide windows, tall trees, a place I had bought years ago, paid in full, no loans, no debt. The table leaned in. I explained that after years in the factory, I invested carefully, small amounts, long-term plans. I lived simply not because I had nothing but because I chose to. The mansion wasn't for showing off. It was meant to be a future home for family gatherings, for grandchildren running across wide floors, for holidays filled with laughter. Melissa's smile disappeared. I placed another document on the table. I also set up a trust fund for Daniel and for any children he might have. Everything I worked for was never meant to sit in my pocket, it was meant to protect my family. The room was silent, even the clock seemed to pause. The shift. Melissa's face flushed. I didn't know, she stammered. I smiled softly. You didn't ask. Daniel stood up, tears in his eyes. Dad, why didn't you ever tell me? I shrugged, because I didn't want to be loved for what I have, I wanted to be loved for who I am. For the first time that evening, I saw shame in Melissa's eyes. Real shame, not the kind you perform, the kind that makes you look inward. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I judged you, I thought you were nothing. I looked at her. That's the danger of judging people by their clothes or their comfort. Some of the richest people you'll ever meet carry their wealth in silence. Some of the poorest wear gold and still lack kindness. The moral. That night I didn't stay for dessert. I hugged my son, told him I loved him, and walked back into the cold with a lighter heart. Because the truth is, wealth isn't the mansion, it isn't the money, it isn't the power to silence someone who hurt you. Wealth is dignity. Wealth is choosing humility in a world that rewards arrogance. Wealth is knowing who you are, even when others try to shrink you. I am Jack, I am 60 years old. And I learned that day that the quietest people in the room often carry the deepest stories and the strongest hearts. Moral of the story. Never judge a person by their appearance, lifestyle, or silence. True wealth is not always visible. Respect costs nothing, but it can change everything.